Hello, everyone. My name is Maxwell Desibus. I also go by HiBob7 or Soling Smash in various places. My pronouns are he, him. I do a lot of Turnabout musical related things, but I am currently playing Larry Butts in the defense cast and Winston Payne and Yanni Yogi in the prosecution cast of Turnabout Musical Virtual Edition. And I'm also on the creative team and the narrator and secondary ensemble in Turnabout and Ace Attorney Musical. Today, I will be hosting or moderating this Turnabout Table Talk. This year, 2022, is the 15th anniversary of the long-running Ace Attorney fan project, Turnabout Musical. It's been a big year for the show. In August, Albino Squirrel Productions in Minneapolis performed Turnabout Samurai live on stage for the first time ever. And there are also two other major shows in production, which we'll see release in the coming months. We have Nerdification Media's audio production of Turnabout and Ace Attorney Musical by the MyFA Protection Squad, and the digital show Turnabout Musical Virtual Edition by Euro Productions. So in celebration of the 15th anniversary and for cross-promotion between these upcoming productions, we're going to be holding roundtable discussions with the casts of TMVE and TAM, along with special guests from the entire history of Turnabout Musical. Today's roundtable consists of these wonderful actors who bring the characters of Miles Edgeworth and Manfred von Karma to life. So let's go around and have everyone introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, my name is Michael Turner. I was previously Manfred von Karma in the Albino Squirrel production of Turnabout Musical. I also played Will Powers in this year's edition of Turnabout Samurai by Albino Squirrel Productions. Oh, and my pronouns are he, him. So
I am James Turl, also known as Turlytron, and I am playing Miles Edgeworth in the defense cast and Manfred von Karma in the prosecution cast of Turnabout Musical Virtual Edition. And I'm also in the ensemble for TAM, where I play Gregory Edgeworth as well, which is just a fun tidbit for this conversation. All of the Edgeworths are here.
We got them all, boys. I am Catherine Leister. I also go by Kate or Katie100 Catherine, depending on where you know me from. I use she, they pronouns, and conversely to James, I play Manfred von Karma in the defense cast and Miles Edgeworth in the prosecution cast. I am part of the MyFA Protection Squad, specifically one of the Urn Smashers, who is the creative team behind TAM, and for TMVE, I am also co-director and music director of the show. I have a lot of hats, and they all look very good on me. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you've said you have a lot of hats. All right, hang on. I am Gavarok, also known as Gavarok, occasionally referred to as Gavarok, and I suppose that anybody watching this can call me Gavarok. I am a Twitch streamer when I am not doing voice acting and singing, and I play Miles Edgeworth in Turnabout, an Ace Attorney musical, and there's a few more, but I think that gets the point across.
They just keep coming.
It's a lovely poster you got back there.
There's like 9.
I have a lot of questions, and I don't know if I want any of them answered right now, actually. I want to live in this mystery.
You said you had a lot of hats, and I got competitive.
I don't have that many hats. You very much win that.
Okay.
I'm like,
Yeah, I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Gavarok. That is where you'll find me, other than projects like this one.
Awesome. Well, let's get started with our first main question from Ari. So what is your history with Ace Attorney and or Turnabout Musical? Were you familiar with either of them before you auditioned or were cast?
Yeah, so my experience with Ace Attorney was while I was at college in Mankato, Minnesota. Bryn Tanner, who produced the Albino Squirrel production of Turnabout Musical and Turnabout Samurai, he actually introduced me to the Ace Attorney games. So he actually had me play through the original trials with Manfred von Karma and all those goofy cast of characters. I really fell in love with the games, but I hadn't really touched them in several years. That was back in like 2013 that we had me play the games and stuff. So through Game Grumps, I got reintroduced to it, and then eventually Bryn brought up the fact that he wanted to do Turnabout Musical and have me in the show eventually. But to an undisclosed role that we hadn't really figured out until casting time came about. So that's my exposure.
Ace Attorney was a Christmas, and I don't remember what Christmas it was. It was when I was like 11, 12ish. But a cousin of mine walked up to me, and it wasn't a Christmas present, it was a lend. He walked up to me, he handed me Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, and he said in a quiet voice, "I'm pretty sure this is your..." And he said it quietly because it was a family Christmas, and he said, bleep that if you got it, but it's part of my origin story. So he was correct, and I thank him very dearly if he happens to be watching this. But I got heavily into Ace Attorney 1 and Ace Attorney 2 as a kid, and then here in Australia, Ace Attorney 3 didn't come out, and they skipped straight to Apollo Justice. And I refused to deal with that, so I left the series alone until I could get all of the games much later, I think mid-2010s. Always had a soft spot for them, though, and I'm very glad that I've been able to play them all in order now. Turnabout Musical, I discovered on June 2 via the TAM Casting Call Club post, and that was 2 months after I made my own Ace Attorney parody song for Les Mis, completely coincidentally. I published that, and then a month later I found the TAM post and turned upside down for a bit, and then I joined a Discord full of very excited people, and it's been real good ever since.
When I first, I think, encountered Ace Attorney, I'd seen like parody videos on YouTube and stuff, and that was sort of my only exposure until I think it just came up on my Tumblr a lot. That was where I found it. And that eventually convinced me to play the games. I got Ace Attorney Investigations first, and then played 5 minutes of it and was like, hang on, I think I need to go back. And then I played them in order from there. And I think similarly to that, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember exactly, that I would have found like the August Day animatic posted on Tumblr somewhere. I guess probably around sort of early 2010s. This was like definitely pre-OST release, and just immediately I loved it and consumed all Turnabout Musical stuff I could find. I was like trawling forums for like demos and stuff and just everything. And yeah, it's just gone since there until I found these casting calls, and here I am now. Very exciting.
My introduction to Ace Attorney came first. As a very fun starting spot, depending on when I told the story, because I don't remember half the time what the actual order was. But I do remember the starting point, because I made a note of it, was during, I was in marching band in high school. I think this is when I was in 8th grade, actually. And one of my friends who was in my section, for some reason, during like the middle of a game, just leaned over to me and was like, "Have you ever heard of the Ace Attorney games?" And I said, "No." And he was just like, "You should look them up. I think they're very good, and I think that you would like them." And I was like, "Okay." And so I wrote it down, and then didn't do it for like 4 years. And then I found the Game Grumps playthrough of it, because I have class, I guess. Watched that whole thing, and then kind of forgot about it again for a bit. And then came across, as I was doing my theater kid brain thing, and I was like, I bet someone's made a parody of this, or like an animatic to some musical theater song. I just looked up Ace Attorney Broadway, or like Ace Attorney Musical, and TM Live comes up, and I was like, ooh, fun, this is 3.5 hours. And so I got about 10 minutes in, and I was looking through the credits to see if there was like anyone that I recognized, and I saw a character name, like Furo Tigre, that I didn't recognize because I hadn't played the third game yet. And I was like, oh wait, I don't know if I can watch this yet because it's gonna spoil something. And so I got rid of it and downloaded the trilogy onto my 3DS, and then again forgot about it for a while, and then came back to it. And like March of 2021, I remembered that Ace Attorney existed, and did the exact same thing where I finished, like, I think the second game at least, did the thing where I looked up Ace Attorney Musical, found TM Live again, and I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if I could watch this now. And then I did, and realized it was just about the first game. And of course, promptly, immediately fell in love with it. I asked my friend if they wanted to watch it with me, and so I watched it twice within the span of about 48 hours, both, of course, late at night, because that's what you do with shows that are 3.5 hours long, obviously, and found the Discord a few days later. And I just got so deep in the paint with it so fast because hi, I have ADHD and autism. So I've just been like stuck here. And now look at me. Now look at me. I'm part of too many things now.
Wonderful. I have a quick additional question for Michael from Roof, asking, did you know before you did Turnabout Musical that it had such a built-in audience, such rabid fans, and did finding out put any more pressure on you going forward?
Bryn had always talked about the fact that there were like forums about Turnabout Musical and how it was like a constantly developing thing, but I hadn't really known how widespread the fan base had been prior to joining in the musical. And then once we started the rehearsal process, that's when we all kind of went on to the Turnabout server on Discord and discovered that like everyone is so supportive and so like enthusiastic and just amazing. And I think if anything, it didn't add pressure, it just added to our enthusiasm and love for the project even more. And so we would like come to rehearsals every day being like, you know, if a picture of our rehearsal went up or anything, like, or like if any new material came out about us, we would see that people were like hyping it up and everything. And we were just like, oh my God, there's emoticons of me now. Like I'm doing the point and it's me. And it just felt amazing to like have this much of a fan base around this material and just knowing that we were a part of this big thing. I hadn't felt that since like I did a production of Avenue Q back in 2013, and I hadn't felt that enthusiasm for a show like that since that point. So coming into this project was absolutely amazing. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, this question is from a little known person called Katie100 Catherine, and it's, in your own portrayals of Miles Edgeworth and or Manfred von Karma, are there any elements of your own portrayal that were either inspired by someone else's take on the role or other characters or actors that you used as reference for inspiration? And conversely, what then differentiates your version of the character from others? What did you bring to the performance?
Okay.
I could start just because I think mine's funniest.
Go. Yes. Go on.
So honestly, in terms of inspiration, going back and watching ASPTM and TM Live and listening to the cast recording, I found myself gravitating a lot towards, especially Nate and Michael. They're Von Karmas, I will say. Just in terms of, I liked the like regal air almost that Nate does with Von Karma, but also Michael, the fact that your Von Karma is like a tenor and like I'll say couldn't rely on the voice being like a lower voice being an intimidation factor. And I'll, if you want to explain that when you go, be my guest. But those were the two like that I started with and grew from there. There are some other inspirations that I kind of took on in terms of what I had to do, because I don't know if you can tell by everything about me, I'm not a low-voiced guy. So I bring a fun thing called gender, where Von Karma is more, you know, feminine presenting. And so I had to figure out, all right, what can I do with this role? What would I have to do with this role that isn't just, I'm scary man and I can kick the shit out of you? Like, no. And so relying on more like female anti-heroes or antagonists that like either use their femininity to their advantage or just embrace it as part of themselves and don't rely on it. There's some things I can say and I can't because they're spoilers for Max, but that was definitely a point of inspiration, looking at how femininity is used in terms of crafting an actually threatening and scary antagonist that's not just like entirely catered for the male gaze. I didn't ignore that, but that was more of a bonus for me personally. I can go back to Edgeworth in a minute. I don't want to sit here and ramble for 5 minutes straight.
I would say the main thing that I familiarized myself with, because again, I found TM through the TAM casting call, and I wanted to focus on TAM versions of stuff. So I focused more on the TAM demos. I watched the other performances basically once each, and then said, okay, now I'm going to focus on TAM while I'm working on TAM. So the Edgeworth voice that is in my head is, well, Max, from the you may hide if you wish, but no, I had a voice for Edgeworth in my head that is still the voice I'm using from playing the games to myself and streaming them on Twitch and doing the performances. I'll talk about where that came from after I say this, but adjusting that to the Turnabout musical version of Edgeworth, how he's written, I took a lot of cues from how Max portrayed the character in those demos, found the balance that I wanted between what I'd known and what I was learning, and so that's you are who I would credit. As for what other characters reference my Edgeworth, well, when I was a kid, the voices that I heard, the voice actors that I heard, went into how characters sounded in my head when I played games with no voice acting, and I'll say the two voices that go into what I'm doing as Edgeworth, nothing like him really. One of them is James from Team Rocket.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one is Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Those are the two, I guess, vocal registers types that created the voice that I used for Edgeworth. I don't know why, but a lot of that goes way back to when I was younger, and I just kept it in my head.
Because I sort of found Turnabout Musical very shortly after getting into the games, and so I sort of had it there whilst I was playing them. For me, those voices are the character voices. So my sort of vocal affect for Edgeworth comes very much from Matt Carlo on the OST album. That's probably the performance that, because it's, to me, that's just Edgeworth. You know, those characters are those actors. So a lot of it comes from that. And this is sort of the thing I have in my head, the sort of half joke, half real sort of answer to a character that's inspired it. But I've gotten a surprising amount of inspiration playing Edgeworth from Batman. It's like my thing where I'm like, because it's like there's this thread of like, I found this real, when I've started playing this role, there's a real thread of like anger towards like crime and sort of also directed inwards that's part of that role. And it's like there's this just under the surface like anger and spite almost that really sort of fuels the emotion of their character. And so that's just sort of what I say as a funny thing, is that I play my Edgeworth as Batman, uptight prosecutor Batman. So that's what you have to look forward to.
Edgeworth is Bruce Wayne. I mean, it's
he's got cars. Much. He's, you know, it's all there.
Bruce Wayne's parents died in an elevator. Wait, no.
Anyway, there's the whole thing.
Yeah, as far as my portrayal of Manfred von Karma, because I wasn't really too familiar with, Turnabout Musical Live prior to going into it, and the only like voice clips I heard of Manfred von Karma were Danny from Game Grumps doing the voice of Manfred von Karma. I was like, okay, well, I know Von Karma's a bass, and I definitely don't want to do it like my cheeks are filled with marshmallows, so that's not something I'm gonna do. I did end up watching a bit of Turnabout Live and found that he had done the voice in the lower register with a lot more bravado, and definitely a lot more, it felt like there was a lot more patience to the character. And when I looked at the material for Von Karma, I first off could not do the bass voice as a natural tenor. So we found out in rehearsals that it would actually be better to go in the upper register. And I found myself actually looking more at the music of Bat Boy, the musical, as inspiration. for like my portrayal of Von Karma, because it's definitely like rock opera, higher register, like really hits you hard, and that kind of became the starting point for me to really like build on the character. And so with that higher register rock opera-esque like background in my head, I found Von Karma being a more energetic character than originally intended, where it actually started to build into discovering more motivations about the character too, in the fact that like the very base thing that I found out when doing this was like if you could put the character of Von Karma into one sentence, it's Manfred Von Karma is a 100 dash runner as opposed to Phoenix Wright, who is a marathon runner. And Phoenix Wright wears Manfred Von Karma down to the point where he gets more and more manic as the trial goes on, because he just wants it to end now. And so that frustration collides with Phoenix Wright, who's willing to draw this out to the end of time. So Von Karma just goes more and more, just, I got to do something to stop this. And because he can't do anything, he can just get more and more aggressive with his cane and just like get more and more shaky. And I don't know. We'll get into it later if we have more questions about that. But yeah, that was my starting point for Von Karma.
It's awesome. If James or Kate wants to pick up on their prosecutor cast roles, you can do that now as well.
Yeah, I can jump back in with that. So for Edgeworth, just to embarrass him more, absolutely. One of the starting points for finding my Edgeworth was just a fun combination of Matt DiCarlo and Max, just listening to those demos in my head over and over. I know that when we first started reading for like the prosecution cast runs way back in the day, I was like, I don't know what voice I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna sit it down here and try and work from that starting point and find it. And then through that sort of working through the voice, it just sort of found its performance spot in just me, but I have this air of I'm better than you, and I know I'm better than you, which is a very fun spot to sit in. It's not necessarily any more dignified. It's just I know the words I'm about to say. And then as soon as that's not the case, it just becomes so bratty. It's so fun. And it's got some influence from James as well, just because I've worked opposite him for months, and it's just sort of bled across to like, I like that, I'm taking that, that's mine now too. I'm so sorry. It's a very fun experience watching someone else do the role to your face and be like, how are you doing it? It's like that one production of Frankenstein from like years ago from National Theatre Live. I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but it's a very good production of Frankenstein.
Yeah, I think there's that aspect for me as well, where we're both doing these performances across different runs and sort of mirroring each other. So for me, I realized very early on that I could not fully accurately emulate Kate's Manfred Von Karma. So as much as I tried, there was one rehearsal where I was like, I'm going to do exactly the same. It was like, no. So it's sort of like taking the original sort of core character and then finding a middle ground between me embodying that and then this finding, you know, something, elements of what Kate's doing to bring to this character. And it sort of ended up as like, I think it's like a nice mix of like Dracula, Frankenfurter from Rocky Horror, and Emperor Palpatine. And that's sort of where I've landed. But hot. that's where he is.
This is
now.
implying Emperor Palpatine is not hot. This is a debate I'm going to have right now.
You dissing on my boy Sheev?
How could
Palpy? Oh,
Okay.
don't do my boy wrong like that.
How could you, frankly?
No shade. No, I'm not throwing shade on Sheev. I'd never dream of it.
Just the entire dark side, I see. Yeah.
Here's a fun question, which I guess is sort of two in one. First is, Edgeworth and Von Karma both try to be perfect in the courtroom. What are some ways that they keep up their perfection out of the courtroom? And if you want to supplement this also with any like fun lore or backstory for your version of the character that you've come up with, feel free to share that as well.
He's got to have a secret room full of collected stuff. Like, just like Steel Samurai is the obvious answer, but I feel like he picks something that he wants to assemble all of and just will hyper focus on that and complete it, and then that's another row on his shelf, and then he'll do another one. And he says nothing about this to anybody, and he deletes as much of the evidence of the purchases as he can. And there's probably a code for that door, but it makes him happy.
Yeah, and surely there's got to be like one for display, one for good, one mint in box of everything.
Oh, go
no,
ahead.
You.
No,
Well,
no,
I
no,
was
no.
going to say, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure in a character rehearsal once we got into skincare routines for these characters.
We did.
So,
What was
yeah.
it like? If only like I had supple enough skin, I could have saved my father. What was it?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh my God.
So Von Karma's got that down pat, and Edgeworth's got to, learn from the master of skincare in perfection, that perfect skin. So I'm sure they've both got that down real good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think Von Karma is definitely a man who cares about his hair product and his skincare very much. One thing that we jokingly made up behind the scenes during a show was Manfred Von Karma is perfect in every aspect of his life. But once a night, he has a specific room at his house where he opens up the room, locks the door behind him, and it's just a room filled with Krispy Kreme donuts, and he allows himself one every single night. And that's his one imperfection, because he has to get it out there, and then he goes out back into the world and just forges all the evidence and gets his job done. That's how he does it. He's only allowed one happiness in his life, and it's Krispy Kreme. But I think there's definitely like the constant lore of like, how is Manfred Von Karma as a father to Edgeworth and his daughter as well? Like, I don't know, there was always like talks about that during rehearsals, but I never wanted to get too far into that, because I think at this point in the timeline, we're looking at Von Karma as a vengeful spirit who's thrown fatherhood out the window to do nothing but get what he wants. So yeah, that was something that I was like, I'll have the conversation later, and just never got around to it.
I think part of it came around kind of recently in terms of like properly spelling it out, because I think it's something that I had discussions with Archer about, and then just didn't tell the cast because it never came up. In terms of my Von Karma, it's not necessarily like an imperfection thing, but it is a tidbit of lore, I guess, that came about because of how much the character had to change because of me portraying them. But we've aged them down for me specifically. So now they're like, DL6 happened when they were like 20. So in terms of like, they were still like a known prosecutor, but sort of in the like Siska vibe of they started like when they were a teenager. So they had the win record behind them, and this was just the first time they had that blemish, and it changes the energy of it. Instead of being like really petty of an adult man to do, it's just like this barely not a teenager anymore, not getting their way for the first time, which I find particularly funny. But which also means that this 20-year-old who's going through a time saw a 9-year-old and was like, yeah, okay, all right, and just like took them in when they were like barely 10 years older than them, which is a fun dynamic to play with in terms of, as Michael brought up, like parenting ? Like, oh, yeah. I do have to, take care of this little rat thing now, which does raise questions about Siska, but not ones that I'm going to answer. But I think that's my favorite bit of lore that's come from character exploration, is instead of really leaning into it on the one side of like, all right, are we gonna just full like still age it up and have it be like this? It's like, it's more fun going completely the opposite direction with it. I'm gonna reference my favorite piece of lore that came up earlier today, and also for Edgeworth say my favorite piece of lore is the Monsters Inc. 7-Eleven Slurpee Cups. My favorite story, for context, that came out of a conversation way back in the day of this prompt of what happened with young Phoenix, young Larry, and young Edgeworth after the class trial. And we somehow ended up with the story of we went to 7-Eleven and got Slurpees in the limited edition Monsters Inc. cups. And it was just, we made a day of it, and it was great. And that story lives in my head rent-free constantly.
I
Yeah.
love that.
It was so pure. I don't remember how it started. But I love that it ended there.
I'm pretty sure it was me because I indirectly based that on a memory that I have in real life.
That's
It's so
not the usual
good.
energy with which you deliver those 3 words, Max, but I'm here for it.
Wait, what?
Oh.
Which words?
It was me.
It was me.
Oh, it was me. Yes.
It was me.
It was me.
It was me. Yes.
Love that that's become a meme.
Now,
It's so
now.
good.
Okay.
Now,
did-
it was all of us, except Michael, I think. Except actually.
Plot twist.
Okay. It's not a cravat, right? It's what is it?
Jabot is the word I saw. Something.
Jabot.
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 Yeah.
Jabot.
Okay.
I saw it. I
This is
saw it
new
written.
information.
Didn't hear it pronounced.
Yeah.
The jabot. Who wears it better, Miles or Manfred?
Mm,
Do I have to go grab it? It's upstairs.
I think with the Edgeworth hair flips, Edgeworth does it better.
Hmm.
I think
With
overall-
the Peter Wig dimension.
Yes.
yeah, the
yes.
Peter Wig dimension.
The, like-
I think Edgeworth's got a better like color combination. Manfred von Karma is very cool. Like, you know, I love the blue jewel in the center, but like, come on, you got to step outside your boundaries every once in a while. Go like hot fire engine red for that one if you're gonna do it. I think Edgeworth takes the step beyond. He outdoes von Karma.
Hmm. I think the key for him, perhaps, and I'm going to draw a bit on Ace Attorney 3 here, where we see a younger Edgeworth in one point. I think the key was when he calmed his outfit down and refined it and moved it away from von Karma, because he begins with an outfit that is very taken from von Karma, and
Yeah.
then he removes some stuff and changes some things, but he keeps the jabot, and that's where he turns around to Daddy and says, "I've done it better." May not say that, but it's. I think it's.
Yeah, I think there's a class and simplicity to it. You know, his jabot flows freely. The ruffles, they flow, billowing in the wind. And there's a you know, it's a striking image. So I agree with what seems to be the consensus that
It
Edgeworth
flutters,
did
one
it.
might say.
Mm.
fluttery man.
Does not flutter that much. I will
Okay.
agree.
But
Um,
which von Karma prop is better? Jessica's whip or von Karma's cane?
You made the cane, dude. Like you
Mhm.
you turned that cane into an item.
Well, yeah, and so like the big thing behind the cane becoming like such a gavel for von Karma was like,
as opposed to the finger snap, which is the
Yeah.
game and in the script, I think.
Well, it's
script, some parts of the script.
yeah, and so like the thing about my portrayal of that was like, if I didn't have the commanding voice for it, von Karma was going to use the cane as the gavel because he's the judge, jury, and evidently the executioner in a lot of instances as well. And so if von Karma ever had a point to prove, it was going to be with that cane. So I'm just saying, I think von Karma's cane is, I don't know, maybe the whip is something that in a future turnabout project we'll actually see, but
Yes.
I have to
For
text
the-
Archer. Hold on.
for the moment, I'm saying the cane tops the whip.
You were worried. Were you actually worried at the time about the possibility of the cane going through the desk?
No, but the cane did break on several occasions. We had to super glue it, and then we had to put a wooden rod inside the cane just to make sure it didn't like bend in half.
Mhm.
Because I was so aggressive with that thing.
How can
Yeah.
you not be aggressive? You have a big old bangy stick.
That desk was really durable too. Like there was not a scratch on that thing by the end of the show. Yeah.
Excellent.
You did
Yep.
a lot on that desk.
Oh yeah,
I am surprised that
Especially
thing
with my head.
survived.
my head got. I'm
Did
surprised
you?
I didn't
Okay,
get a mark.
I'm asking as a concerned friend. Like, I'm sure. Did you hurt yourself?
Oh no, I was more lightheaded by the fact that I had to scream right before that scene happened.
Mhm.
And that was what like, because you'll notice in the YouTube video, like I'm trying to catch up with myself in the lyrics because I'm like, oh, I missed this. I was lightheaded from the scream, and I was like, oh, okay, I gotta take a breath and just rush through this now. We're gonna get there. We're gonna race to the end. So Yeah.
If you aren't lightheaded after doing that scream, frankly,
So
I was going to
much.
say I've been like I'm going to pass out mid rehearsal like
You-
at least
you-
a few times.
it's gone on record multiple times during runs during that scene where I was just like from the beginning, I am not a quitter. We would get to that scene and I would just be like, oh, my fingers are like, let's say
tingly.
tingly
Yeah.
fingies.
Yeah.
And we would get to scream and I would be like going kind of into a gremlin and just finishing the scene the best I could. And I would finish my part in the
That's right.
song and it's
name
like
is my
the
curse.
finally unwind, boom. And I would literally collapse down and like get out of frame and I was just sitting on the floor just like
Give me. I gotta
like I wouldn't come back for the last song. I would just
Oh.
be like sitting in a chair just like, oh my
You're done.
God. Oh god.
No,
Not only that, but like all of the time where and this is a real tangent we're going on now. But
Yeah,
all-
yeah,
no,
No,
but this
continue.
I invite this.
Edgeworth
you
just
met us?
having like a panic attack through just the last part of the show where I just tense up so much and the breathing becomes so erratic that it's like, oh my god, I think I'm like sort of hyperventilating myself into unconsciousness. He's a sad boy.
Physical
and that's
health
his
is
sad moment.
we sacrifice physical health for the bit, and
Mhm.
frankly, that's
Yeah.
cool of us. I think
It's worth it.
Well,
It's
worth
worth it.
Acting is just like riding the line of like not passing out and passing out. And you get there right in that sweet spot, and then you're great. You're
Some of
doing
my
it.
old instructors are gonna find this and be like, "No, it's not." What?
There's such a feral energy by the end of that. At least with the Turnabout musical albino squirrel production, like that scene just hits such high energy moments at the end there where you're just like, how can this not be insane? Like we've got this guy screaming at the top of his lungs like he's been backed into a corner. He's got to jump out and do everything he can to just win this case no matter what. So I mean, Von Karma is absolutely insane. I don't know, it's so wild to play that end scene. And I didn't actually have the breath support for that scream until the final two performances. Before
Mm.
that point, I had nearly like ruined my voice screaming every single night. So it was, yeah. I don't know.
I was I'm sorry, last tangent, and then I promise we will move on. I was recording screams like 2 days ago, and I did the smart thing and didn't prep my voice at all. I just went in my closet and was like, all right, let's go. And mainly I'm happy my neighbors didn't call the cops because I can imagine hearing just like for like an hour straight and just being like, okay. But it's so interesting thinking about the scream though, in terms of what direction it goes, in terms of like, is it this like, is it primal, is it like panicked, is it like anger, is it like all of these things. And I had this whole conversation with Archer about it. It's so wild to think about like how much motivation you would have to, or you can put behind, especially since it's such a pivotal moment as well.
Yeah.
It's not only like the climax for Von Karma, but it's also like for Edgeworth, like he has to recognize it, and it has to have this recognizable enough tone to be like, oh, that was a scarring noise right there is what that was.
It's the exact
Yeah.
same scream you would hear from Von Karma getting shot in the arm. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
what exactly does that sound like to be in that much pain and anguish that losing a trial like that is just as traumatizing for him? Like what would
Mhm.
that sound like? And that's, you know, it's such a line that you have to tiptoe between like, all right, enough, dude, it's a courtroom, but like also
chill. This is a
But,
court
like,
of law,
this
not a
is his
playground.
life.
You can like breathe.
it's 100% his reputation, his life, everything is on the line at this point. He's been caught, he's been found out. There's nothing left for him in the tank. This is the only thing left he can give. And so I loved doing the character analysis for Von Karma. It was so much fun to do.
Now, Gavarok, you
Hmm.
are not like the rest of these performers. You haven't been rehearsing this and performing like huge traumatic emotional moments live, with the exception of the Decree performance, if you want to talk about that. But
Yes.
if you want to contribute something about your portrayal of Edgeworth that might fall along similar lines, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, it's I'll separate out that one specific because I feel like that was completely different from everything else that I've done for Tam, and so I
Mhm.
sort of
Sure.
would answer for both. For Tam week to week, yeah, it was every week you get into your booth and you look at that material, and so you're sort of jumping all over the place, and you get a little snapshot of a moment. Which is good for a lot less hand tinglies. That definitely helps. I don't think I experienced that during my Tam recordings because of how much I could pace it out. But in terms of the like emotional intense moments, that did make it more challenging. Like the songs towards the end of Act Two, having to then do a song from Act One and go back to an Edgeworth who's in his element. There is a week gap between those, but back and forth is not easy. I'm glad for being the one person in this table without a Von Karma roll to hear you guys talk about that scream, because my microphone does one thing badly, and that is peak on a loud line. So if I had that scream to do, I think I would have had to do it from the next room to make this microphone take it well. So yeah, I deliberately did not go super loud on anything that Edgeworth has done so far, and I think I can get away with that as Edgeworth that you can't as Von Karma. So that's another. But for doing Decree live, again, it was very different from doing it live on stage because I was sat here for 7 minutes singing the song. It was still understated in terms of physicality. The only thing I did for physicality was I grabbed an envelope and I wrote this on it, which I told nobody about. That was fun. I held that up real quick. It's if you have not seen the video of the live performance of Tam Decree yet, which you should, part of the new material is Edgeworth is given the letter that is mailed to the caretaker of the boat rental shop from Von Karma. Von Karma hands him that letter and says, "Mail this for me," and Edgeworth doesn't know what it's about.
Just watching
news to
Michael's
you.
face, like
I like that. I really like that.
When I saw a hint of I don't know why you have that, and I thought, oh, I'm going to tell the story then. Well, the part of the Tam Decree is the addition of this letter, and it's a wonderful moment, and I thought I would sell it better by making that very clear, which I was able to do because I had a camera instead of a stage. So I'm proud of that. That's probably my favorite thing I did from that performance specifically, because I came up with it very close to when we went live. And anyway, that was definitely an emotional roller coaster and challenge to be able to do it without full range of expression and moving around and do it the way one would do on stage while still conveying the intensity, I would say. Whereas recording Decree for the album, which I then did later, I did it over 3 nights and I got to have about 10 goes of every section. So yeah, it's very interesting to do the same song 2 exceedingly different ways, I would say. Is how I'd wrap that up, how I'd wrap those thoughts up.
Would the other Edgeworths like to comment about their experience learning and performing Decree, or other Edgeworth music that you particularly want to talk about or enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, wow, Decree's just it's a real good one, because you have such that range of the emotion of the character, and like this this internal monologue that he's having about his purpose and all of this, and it lets you do a lot of fun things with that back and forth of sort of him ruminating on his purpose and what he should be doing in a courtroom and things like that. Another fun one is, and it sort of goes back into what I was saying, is Who Killed Gregory Edgeworth. That's the one where I I pass out and fall on the floor, and that's not, it's mainly just spoken dialogue in that one from Edgeworth, but I love getting that little knot of like panic as this story comes out and all these details unfold, and it's just this unwinding thing of this vulnerability for him, and you really get it in there, and it's like this panic, and that's a really exciting one to do, I think, as well. Not even musically, just in terms of the performance behind it. It's very cool, and all with, obviously, we're not on a stage doing virtual edition, so it's not in the same way as Gav literally sitting there doing Decree, but it's still a very a more constrained sort of thing. So it's trying to do a lot with as little as you can, and it's a It's a cool process.
I will very much agree in Huko Gregory Edgeworth. Not only in terms of Edgeworth, because again, you have that narrative like, this is not, I'm not having a great time right now. I really, thanks. I really don't want to talk about this, but morals and the idea of this is probably the first time he's verbally talked about this in a very long time. And there's like that to wrestle with as well. I'll loop that back to being very fun as Von Karma as well. Just in terms of like, yes, you are doing exactly what I want you to do. I've trained you perfectly to dig your own grave. Like that kind of feeling as well. So you have two ends of this I'm having a great time spectrum, and we're playing both of them, and it's fun. But in terms of Edgeworth specifically, I will agree that Decree is a masterclass of the kind of I am or the I want. It kind of doubles depending on where you are. There have been full discussions about this that I'm not going to track back up, but going through that like perfect 3-act story, especially with the OST Decree structure, and like perfectly segmenting out like what is the thought process that leads to where we end up, is such an interesting study on Miles and this fun thing of trying to get the audience to sympathize with him so that Act 2 can be interesting, while also rectifying, or not rectifying, but he is still very much the antagonist of Act 1. So it's you're you're pulling a lot of strings in 6 minutes, and it's great if it works. And then I'm gonna add that another one of my favorites in general, but also as Edgeworth, is Alone. I love Alone so much because it's Edgeworth like at his lowest, but he doesn't want to admit it because he's stubborn and he's a brat. And it's finding the inner monologue of like, do I really want you to help me? And am I willing to ever say that? The answer is no, we haven't like gotten to that point yet. But like that internal wrestling of like, I got this, please don't touch me, I got this one, versus like, but I mean, like, but like if anyone's going to be able to help me, it's probably right. But I don't want him to, but I kind of want him to. It's
Will they, won't they?
Will they, won't they?
Yes.
Tsundere garbage. But turn it into one of my favorite 3 minutes of the show.
Just as a note on my own experience with Who Killed Gregory Edgeworth, which, as James brought that up, I thought, oh no, I do have something there. Very specifically, that is probably the song that I spent the most time trying to figure out what my approach would be. I think for all of the others, I knew how I wanted to do it before it was my day. For that one, I specifically looked around at different versions of that song from different actors to see where the line was drawn for them on the amount of emotion they showed in the spoken dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I felt from, not every single one that I listened to, but generally speaking, most tended to be more restrained and more holding it in for most of it. And I decided partially to explore this and partially because I wanted to put a spin on it a little, to break more. I think I wanted to decide, you know what, the guy's been speaking very curtly and very controlled the whole time, and this is where he shatters and can't do it anymore. And once I made that choice, I stopped listening back to all of my takes and be like, no, I don't like this, and started thinking, yeah, that's the one. So I'm hoping that when I hear that back, once it's all out and done, that I stick to my yes, this was the right move. But it's probably the one that I spent the most time thinking about and the most back and forth on. I wouldn't say least confidence, but just it was the one that was in my head the most as to which direction to go. So.
Well, as someone who's listened to that performance and some of the sneak peek mixes and so on, I can affirm it's absolutely incredible, and I'm very excited for everyone to hear it.
I appreciate that, even if I wish I could lower this chair right now.
We all have to hide at least
Where's
once.
the
today.
camera?
We got 3 of us.
Okay, just quickly, I would like to then turn it to the Von Karmas if there are particular musical moments for the Von Karmas that you that stick out in your mind as favorites or things that you've put a lot of work into?
I mean, 600,000 volts was, I mean,
Mhm.
that was kind of the song that we actually decided to switch Von Karma to a tenor part. And that I think was the most fun because that's where you really see Von Karma at like that peak feralness where you could just really play with the jutted jaw and the like really like I approached Von Karma more physically to internally than internally to physically. So Von Karma really plays like a vulture throughout the entire show. And I think that scene in particular is where you really see him like as the scavenger and like really just prowling and getting right up into the prey's face and being like, I'm gonna get you. There's no way you're getting away from me. And it felt so right to come out with that rock opera like 600,000 volts of just coming out top notch. That was his victory moment. I really enjoyed doing all of that music just in those particular scenes. The final scene and that scene in particular I think stood out for me. I think it was nice early on during Larry's song to kind of get those brief teases at what he would sound like, but I think we really, really finally get it during 600,000 volts, and it just felt so right.
I was going to point out, like, if your Von Karma and It's Gotta Be the Butts doesn't come up, I was gonna bring it up for you because that is objectively one of the best Von Karma bits in the show.
Well, the slow zoom
Just
on
the
the
I can't even do it. There are a few things that like cemented your Von Karma for me, and that was one of them. I can continue singing your praises later, but I think for me, I will agree. 600,000 volts is one of the most iconic things Von Karma does in the entire show. I can't say anything about it because it's a bit of a spoiler, but if you've seen me do 600,000 volts, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like you said, it is that kind of slow burn, letting it like leak out finally, because like they're onto you. They're getting too close to being right, and so you
Mhm.
have to like scare them off at this point. And
Yeah.
what better way to scare them off than just by letting the facade drop, essentially,
Yeah.
and then coming back later with it back up like nothing happened. It's so good, and I love it. I will add, because I know your production didn't get to do it, unfortunately. I will add Anything to Win. It's one that has had to grow on me as a song to perform in the show, but it is the first time you get to just let yourself like sit in it and let yourself bask in the Von Karma of it. I kind of do want to ask you in a second about your experience of just like getting into it and just being like, "Hi, I'm on stage. We're gonna go."
Yeah.
My mic. But like the idea of a very quick and direct approach versus like this like languishing like in the villain aura of it all. And I clearly am one who likes playing antagonists, minor or major as they may be.
Yes.
But there is something about getting like 4 minutes or however long the song is. That's a very long song, and you get like the Latin behind you. You got like
The Greek chorus.
exactly. You get the fourth wall. People being like
Vomitos! Vomitos!
It's the spooky Mormon hell dream of it all. It's such a like power trip almost. I also will throw in, as you mentioned, It's Gotta Be the Butts. For some reason, as Von Karma is so fun. It's the like I remember we were running it really. We were running it really early. I couldn't watch Max do it because I would laugh too hard. I had to literally like find any character excuse to just like dissociate and say what I needed to say and go back so that I wouldn't like break in the middle of the song.
just running through this is a colossal waste of time over and over
Like,
and over again in your
Colossal
head.
waste of time. Colossal waste of time. Just gotta get there.
Just gotta get there, please, please, please. Like I would just like barrel the camera for like 4 minutes. Just like I know what's happening. I'm not here. I'm not here.
Yeah, I think similar with Anything to Win. Really, it was a song I never really paid much attention to on the OST, just because there's so much of it. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you do it and you're in that moment, you're like, oh no, this is brilliant. When you really focus on it, because Von Karma is just such a deliciously evil character, and that's why I compare him to my boy Sheev Palpatine, because he's evil and he loves it. And it's just reveling in that, and this big grand entrance of I'm here, I'm evil, and I'm gonna mess this up real bad for
He
everyone.
unironically has How Bad Can I Be from the
Wonderful
Lorax
time.
on his Spotify playlist.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that one is always really fun to do. They're all fun, but that one is just, you really feel it, and it really helps get that thrust in of, like, you know, the intention of Von Karma's shenanigans.
Yeah, I think I had asked Zach, our director for Turnabout Musical, about that song specifically, and he actually revealed to me that that was actually the first song that had been cut during our rewrite of the show. And I think it worked to my Von Karma's benefit, because again, like I said at the top, like the previous incarnations of Von Karma for Turnabout Musical have been played very slow, menacing. There's something boiling underneath, but you know that he's evil. Whereas with my Von Karma, it was very much like right out the gate, I've come to win the trial. We're not getting past the first day. This is ending here and now, and we don't have time for this. I'm done. I'm just done. But
Yeah.
what are you guys doing in this musical? Like, I'm here to win. That's it. And like you said, Kate, like, this was my first time playing a villain in a show ever. And it was the most fun, because it was just so much fun being maniacal and just over the top, and like, you don't care what anyone else thinks. You're just on that stage because it's all about you. It's all about you, baby.
And
Yeah.
you get to
That's it.
just do what you want
Yeah.
all the time. And there's a whole essay that could be written there. But like, you just get to be so much, you get to be all the time. And
Yes.
again, like, just not care. Like, you got a brand, you stick to it. And that brand is yes, constantly.
It's
I
me.
was gonna say, being in the room watching Michaels Von Karma come out on stage, and literally by the end of your first line, it sold everyone in the room, because it's the silence. I was taking a meaningful pause before speaking. Decisive evidence, a decisive witness, what could possibly be required? And you give that look with the cane, and
Yeah.
that's literally it. That's all. That's you. And so I'm definitely in agreement with you that, like, that moment is just so well done that, like, any qualms I would have had about anything to win not being there were just gone immediately, because it's like,
You have to make an impact right away.
right.
And the song itself can make an impact, and over time you like get to that point where it like builds and builds and builds. But like you said, Max, it's in that first second that you know, cane smash. Or no, I don't think I even do the cane smash at
You
that
just
point.
you just yell.
Yeah.
Voice smash.
My favorite thing about revisiting the YouTube video of Turnabout Musical is actually watching the video with the live chat, because you can see your messages like being like, that look, Michael's look, like, it's there.
That effect is not lost in the digital space either. Scared the crap out of everybody. It was great.
Okay, we've got a small handful of other questions we want to get through. First, from Roof again, what's another video game that you think would make a great musical?
I have a prepared answer for this.
Go
I
ahead,
want to sell it,
Gavarok.
and if I ever did get back into writing more, okay. Does anybody in this room know or have experience with Disco Elysium?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. It's another narrative game. It's investigative. It's mostly text and dialogue. It is the game of the decade, shooting in just in 2019. And I also consider it a character study. It's like a dark but hopeful character study. You, the protagonist, you wake up, passed out on the floor in a trashed hotel room, surrounded by empty bottles, and you have no idea who you are. You get dressed, you take in the damage, you leave the room. You learn from the first person you talk to that you are a detective, and that you are a guest in the neighborhood because there's been a murder in the middle of a labor union strike, and it's your job to fix that problem. And so you have to do your job, investigate a murder, while you also have to remember what your name is, find your missing badge and gun, account for the many mistakes you made on your alcohol bender, and everybody who knows you knows something that you did, and also try to remember and process your very traumatic past.
Huh.
And I highly recommend it if you're in an okay headspace to get into it. It's really, really good, deeply emotional, very funny, and I think that deeply emotional and very funny is a vibe that adapts to musicals well.
I feel like it's cheating because like two of my two answers like kind of are in the process of it. So Your Turn to Die is a no, but seriously, there's a musical adaptation of that in the works, and I am so excited for it. Literally, a demo dropped 15 minutes ago. But other than that, I like me a good murder game, apparently, and they just translate very well to the stage. I'm not apologizing for that. I have a taste.
I think for me, I've got one like joke answer, and I've got one that like it's not so much my answer that I would give, but I'm speaking for Bryn on this behalf. He's been telling me about this game called Life is Strange, and I think based on what he's described from the game, it sounds like it would be perfect for a musical. That's just kind of something that I feel like if Bryn was here, he would say that answer. As for me, do a Pokemon musical and have all the Pokemon be puppets and just give me the stage. I'm ready to play Ash. I've got the hat in the background. I'm going to get it right now. I'm ready for this.
Sounds like we need to hook Michael up with.
I was gonna say
Hunter,
we have someone for you, Michael. I have great news.
Yeah. I'm putting it on. There we go. I'm back. I got my boy Rowlet.
Baby!
Yeah, he's just gonna boop up every now and then. Anywho, yeah. So that's my vote.
I wasn't told that we were bringing props. Everyone's got props.
Listen, when you're
Everyone's
an
got
actor,
hats.
you have to be ready for the stage at any point.
I don't have any hats anywhere near me. I've decided in the last 5 minutes that I want a Metal Gear Solid musical.
Oh,
I think that'd be wonderful.
that would be sick.
All the Foxhound Squad can have their own little song, have a little group
Mhm.
number.
And Snake is constantly repeating whatever everyone else is singing, like
Yeah.
he's the backing vocal.
See,
In
it
the
just
round.
He's
doesn't
the
stop.
great chorus.
Every
and
song
the
is an unwilling
protagonist.
duet, and that's because he has to come in every time.
Yeah, be perfect.
awesome.
So I think that's my answer. Yeah.
That's an awesome answer. Okay, just two more questions. Firstly, from Shin, at the risk of being cliche, if you were not playing your current role, who would you want to play in? It could be in Turnabout Musical, or if you want to extend it to, I guess, the wider Ace Attorney universe, that's also a possibility.
Yeah, I have a go-to answer as far as Ace Attorney overall, because I always say whenever anything comes up that Miles Edgeworth is my second favorite character in the franchise. That's what he has always been before Tam, before I was playing him in any capacity. Miles Edgeworth is my second favorite character in the franchise. My favorite character in the franchise is Shelley DeKiller. And that's who I had the most fun voicing on my stream. And I don't voice him like an old man. I voice him more like almost James Bond, sort of like refined, like a refined gentleman assassin. And so I've always had a headcanon that he pronounces his name as Shelley DeKiller. And no one else says it that way except for Miles. And they
Oh
are the
my
only
God.
two people in the case who say it properly.
Miles
and everyone
has
else says,
respect.
yeah,
That's
everyone
awesome.
else says DeKiller, but Shelley will say
DeKiller.
DeKiller,
It's the
and Miles will say DeKiller.
it's the Benjamin Nanterre of it all.
That's it. That's it. It's just that little bit of French.
I gotta say, after playing the villain, like, I want to ride that same train, and I would love to play Red White. I think that would be really fun. He just has the fluttery language, and fantabulosico. Yes, it would be so honorific if I could do that. Oh my god, I would have a ball playing Red White.
Yeah, I was gonna also say Red White, but it was kind of like a cheaper answer. I was gonna be like Phoenix is such a great role in this,
Mhm.
and there are just the moments of emotion and the peaks and the valleys are just so juicy and so good. But Red White is just such a fun character, and like you said, playing the villain is always just
It's
irresistibly wonderful.
well, because I think there's like an expectation with protagonists, and
Mm.
like you're going in with such a demand that things be like by the script. But with side characters like that, you can really make it your own, and like because it's not something that anyone really expects. You can come in with your own interpretation of the character and really come in and just go buck wild with it. So I would love to do that with just any side character in the show, but I think Red White stands out.
A quick aside, speaking of wider characters, in a hypothetical Justice for All musical, I'd love to be Matt on Guard. Such a spicy boy.
Yeah.
So that would be one that I would jump at the chance at. In
Rushing like a
hypothetical
spring
role-playing
breeze,
game.
dude.
Yeah, he's a good. I've
And
role played as him on Tumblr for many a year, so I'll bring it back. I'm ready.
You got the experience. It's good.
You've done the character work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I will say, I think my top character where it was like, okay, if I don't get, I'll take anybody, but like if my top characters were Miles Edgeworth, Manfred von Karma, and my other one up there was Larry Butts, and I will stand by that. I don't know if it's just because I've been like working with Max for a long time, or just I do love the idea of playing comic relief characters, but not just to be comic relief characters, because that annoys me to no end when
Mhm.
it's just like funny for funny's sake and you don't give them depth, which is something that Max has, I will say, honed and refined over the years with this little guy. But it just looks so fun. And even Ryan, 2021 Broadway World Award winner for Best Actor in a Musical, Ryan Niedenthal, um clearly put so much energy and like had so much fun with it. Like I can't imagine like not having fun getting cast as Larry, especially with how much you can just play with it. Because even our prosecution cast, Larry, Aaron, who is fantastic, plays it so differently from how Max plays it. And I would love to just try and get in on there and just be feral, but like in a fun way and not in an evil way. Because I'm very good at bringing the energy. I think it's just channeling it into something that's not an antagonist. The other one I think that I would like to try is I would like to try Maya for very similar reasons in terms of like kind of playing the other half of the comedy duo with Nick most of the time. But also, this is a traumatized child. And I think finding that balance in terms of like, oh, she's going through it, but also like she is a kid and she is still having fun.
Mhm.
I think would be very, very interesting to try and find that balance with, especially since the two like blend so well together and they have such a specific dynamic. I think finding that with another actor would be extremely, extremely fun.
Maya also does have one of my like favorite like voice moments in the show, like singing moments in the show. It's the shoulder to cry on. And I'm like, oh, sing it, sister. Yes.
It's so funny, like hearing some of the responses here, being like, "Oh, I'd love to play Larry or Red White." Meanwhile, we just came from the Larry and Red White one thing, and they're like, "We want to play Miles Edgeworth." So that's fun. Okay, we got one last question to
Mhm.
wrap things up. What does Turnabout Musical mean to you? Slash, what has been your favorite part of doing Turnabout Musical or being a part of the Turnabout Musical community?
Really, for me, it has been the community that's been like the best part about doing the musical. It's definitely the reason why we came back for a second year in a row to do Turnabout Samurai. We wanted to do it for you guys because it felt like by the end of Turnabout Musical last year, we really wanted to keep doing it. And the one thing that kept driving us back to it was like not only experiencing the show on YouTube and like having such a good time at rehearsals with one another and like playing video games outside of rehearsals with one another and stuff. We've got a small group of us that do it. But coming back to the Discord server and seeing consistently like, no, we're not done with this yet. Like, and you guys aren't done with it yet either. And during performances of Turnabout Musical, like we would just like after each performance, we would go back to the Discord server and see all of your comments on it and be like, I am so pumped for the next performance and the next performance. And it just kept building over and over. So like, yeah, it was all about you guys. I think that we had such an amazing time with this show.
Gonna try and speed run this story a little because I know that it's something that can take a while to tell. But Turnabout Musical feels to me like the destination of a long journey of bizarre coincidences that happened to me. That have given me a lot of things and put me on a path that I really like. So I guess it goes back to when I said about getting back into Ace Attorney a few years ago after having to stop because of being in Australia and not having access. So I decide to stream Ace Attorney 1, and I do a lot of voice acting in that stream. I get reminded of the random Les Mis song parody that I wrote once the last time I played Ace Attorney, and I'm like, I have a stream and an audience now. What if I worked on that? I met people to collaborate with that on first. And that happened in the background. Also, Ace Attorney is the reason I joined Casting Call Club, because on Twitter, a game developer, posted a call for voice actors, and I didn't have a demo. I wasn't a voice actor, but I had Twitch clips of me doing Ace Attorney voices, and I sent him those, and he put me in his adventure game. So in doing that, I also wound up on Casting Call Club because that was recommended through the experience that I had there and the encouragement that developer gave me to join. So all of those things blended together to me finding that casting call and then finding the Discord server full of people. So I credit all of that with a very large number of new friends I've made that I cherish a lot, as well as setting my path more towards acting and performing, which I always wanted to do but didn't really do much of until this year. And so this show, I think, is just going to be in my heart forever as something I needed that showed up at the right time. That's the speedrun.
It was a good speedrun. Very similarly to that, as to what Gab was saying, I found Turnabout Musical way before I was ever doing any form of acting. And I was always like, I'd love to be Miles Edgeworth. That'd be a great one. And then, it was only then years later that I then started doing it, as my degree at university, after doing a million other things before that. And then, that led me back to the casting call that came out for Virtual Edition. So it was sort of like the seed that planted that growth towards actually doing musical theatre. And when I found the casting call, that was when I actually got involved in the community as well, because we all know the community is a wonderful part of this. It's, one of the best parts, and everyone's just so welcoming and lovely and so fanatical about this project, and it's just so cool to see. So it's just, it's this nice positive, wholesome little thing. Turnabout Musical. It really is.
Turnabout Musical is such a specific part of my creative journey, as in it was not only like this very welcoming community full of people who like would just let me kind of say things and just yes and it to death until something happened with it. It was where I refined my like arranging skills, my like transcribing skills, directing now as well, acting, which while going to university for musical theater was a specific place to like apply new concepts, which I think was very helpful in a technical way. But it's such an open playground to just go and see what happens. And the people that I have worked with over the past like year and a half, 2 years now almost, have all been incredibly welcoming and supportive. And even when like crap kind of hits the fan with TM and like things get like rough personally, like I never felt like I was going to lose this place and these people. There was this air of like constant support of just everybody. Like as soon as someone knew about something, it was like, okay, yeah, we got you. What do we need to do? And I think that really solidified, even like a year and a half in, that feeling of like, okay, this is the closest thing to a family over the internet that I have. There are opportunities that I wouldn't have taken if I hadn't like randomly searched up like, please tell me there's somewhere with sheet music, because that's how I found the Drive, the Discord, and the Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. There are people I wouldn't have met, places I wouldn't have gone, experiences I would not have had the chance to do if I hadn't been part of this really, really niche corner of the internet. And I am always and forever grateful for that. And I don't know what I would be doing with my time if I hadn't accidentally found it. And I'm so happy that I did.
And with that, I just want to say thank you all so much for sharing your time and your insights today, sharing your passion and talents, and being a part of Turnabout Musical. I really appreciate it so much. For everyone who's watching this later, don't forget, we have a bunch of social media that you can follow. There's the Turnabout Musical link tree, which will be in the description. It's got links to Turnabout Musical's official Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Discord, as well as links to the already available productions and the TAM YouTube channel. You can find Giro Productions on their website, giroproductions.card.co, which includes links to their Twitter and Instagram. And you can find Nerdification Media, which produced TM Live and is producing the debut audio production of TAM at nerdification.media, which also has links to their Patreon, Twitter, and YouTube. And of course, keep an eye out for the release of Turnabout, an Ace Attorney musical this November, and Turnabout Musical Virtual Edition in the coming months. Until next time, take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.